Hello and welcome to Stay Energetik, a podcast dedicated to our favourite Belarusian football team, the mighty Energetik BGU. Thank you so much for joining us on our weekly journey through the main talking points of Energetik's last match. Once we've covered that, we'll move on to our thoughts on how we see the next one panning out, and anything else Energetik related that we think you might want to hear.
Привет, Ilya.
And I'm Dan.
And without further ado, Dan, I think we're going to talk about last Friday afternoon's game. And all I can really say about it is how good was that?
Sorry, last Friday's game. What was? Oh, wait, yes, last Friday's game. Now, almost forgotten all about that. Yeah, that was all right, wasn't it? Yeah, just a simple little 5-0 win, just to chuck into the weekend. It's funny because we've talked before about the position of the game. If it happens beginning of the weekend, how it can impact on your weekend, or if you have to wait for it all weekend on a Sunday. But you know what? If we're going to win 5-0 every time, put me first thing on a Friday. I don't. I'm there. I'm in.
Buzzing Friday night, buzzing Saturday morning, still in my head on Sunday night. I have to say, yeah, it's great. It's wonderful, isn't it, when things go like that? So yeah, brilliant. I mean, obviously we had a really early gift to get us started, which was lovely. And then I suppose the only real low point of the whole game, and it seems a shame to talk about referees again, but I think Mr. Coronets can't get away without a mention on this show tonight. I think we both felt, I think the entire world who would have seen that incident felt it was a ridiculous red card. And I'm hoping very much, Dan, that you are going to agree with me.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these funny things because at the time we talked about this to a degree. And as the game went on, I said something along the lines of, it depends how this game ends as to how I'll view this. We ended up winning at 5-0, and to be honest, I even woke up the next morning and almost forgot that this moment had even happened, forgot that we'd, red card, forgot that it might impact on next week. Because, if you win 5-0, you're kind of a different mindset, really. However, that could have had a massive impact on this game. I don't think it was a red. I don't think you think it was a red. I don't think anyone we've spoken to thinks it was a red. Yes, his foot goes a bit high, but at the same time, the guy ducks into it as well. I mean, if you'd come away from that with a yellow card, fair enough, I guess. But there's no intent. There's none of that. And the idea that a game that actually turned out to be really important to us, and especially when we kind of mention maybe a little bit about the other games that have happened this weekend, the idea that a stupid little moment like that, where it's just misjudged by the referee, could have such a massive impact on our season. We've spoken before about centimetres, millimetres, before, but the difference between a red and a yellow, minor things that can have a major impact on the season. Fortunately, it wasn't to be.
I mean, I have to say, I sat there for most of the rest of the first half thinking, oh my God, it's going to happen again. I saw another Vitebsk. I just saw a hot afternoon. I saw our players working hard, to a certain extent, a rearguard action. And then Niall hit the bar for them. And I thought, oh dear. And I think we sat there at halftime, both of us thinking, oh dear. But thankfully, our worst fears were not realised.
Yeah, it was a bit of a funny first half, really. I mean, we talked about the heat as much as anything else. We were both stuck indoors, windows shut, trying to avoid the noise coming from outside. So I think we had a little bit of empathy for players out there playing, but at least we got to sit down, with a cold drink in front of us, not running around in that. But yeah, it was a bit of a funny half, and they were involved. I look back, number of chances they had versus number of chances we had. It was fairly level, but you did get that feeling, didn't you? You were a man down playing in this heat. Is this going to come back and bite us? Yeah, it was a bit of a weird. I remember we talked actually at half time because we were obviously doing the live stream on this, and both of us saying actually this just feels a bit odd, a bit flat. It didn't feel negative. It didn't feel positive. We were 1-0 up, but at the same time we'd lost a player. There was a lot of uncertainty. I don't think either of us, if I turned around to you then and said we were going to win this 5-0, I think you'd have looked at me and laughed, or probably used some stronger language than that. But yeah, it was a very odd end to the first half.
Certainly was. And as I say, we sat there at halftime feeling quite nervous and quite fearing the worst. And then came the Yakshiberg show. He had a supporting cast, but my word, He'd already shown us what he could do early on. Very, very cool finish, capitalising on the mistake from the Slavia midfielder. But after the break, he just went into overdrive, didn't he?
Yeah, and obviously we kind of didn't really touch on his first goal because it's nice to mention them all together a little bit, but he's done a little bit of a favour by Dreads, and that's really not his real name, but that's what I'm going with. Dreads plays a ball, and actually I watched back the highlights again, and Dreads looks really happy as he plays that, but he looks really confident, like he's done the right thing. And Yakshibayev steals in there, gets the ball, knocks it past the keeper, and we've seen him do this so many times this season already. And the expectation is it's going to go somewhere, I don't know where, but somewhere other than the goal. But he's just calm. I mean, the defender kind of comes in, he doesn't matter, he kind of takes it to the right and then flicks it with his left. He just looked completely in control of that moment. And then, this is something that we've said before. And I just want to make a point before we carry on talking about Yakshibayev. Anyone who said that he should be taken out of the team ahead of this game, I think are absolute idiots, absolute fools, don't know what they're talking about. And of course, neither of us would have ever have said that. But yeah, prior to this, I can't remember which game it was. There was one where he did the same kind of thing 2 or 3 times in the same game, even. And it always felt he just lacked that moment of composure, that moment of control. But I mean, we're going to talk about some more of it as we go on, but he looks so calm today in comparison. He wasn't snatching at things. And yeah, that was a really nice goal in the first half. And yeah, the second half, it just only got better, really, didn't it?
I think I've always thought we'd actually both. I mean, I know we both questioned whether he should be in the team, despite what Dan is trying to claim. And also, I've also questioned: does he really know what his best position is? Does the coach really know what his best position is? Where should he be played? And one thing he can't do is actually, which Slavia committed the fatal error of doing in the second half, is give him time and space, give him the opportunity to turn and run at you. Because when he does that, he's absolutely electric. I think we've talked before about his perhaps lack of upper body strength. I do think in a lot of 50-50s, he does tend to get knocked off the ball, and that tends to lead sometimes to some of his more underwhelming performances, because he gets frustrated because he can be outstrengthed relatively easily. But if you give him time and space, like the Slavia defence did in the second half, he will absolutely destroy you. And that is exactly what he did, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we were only, a minute or two into the second half. I'm going to call him Bandages from now on because, I don't remember names. But the guy who went down in, which saw Bakic going off, Bandages, misjudges the ball completely. Completely misjudges it. And Yak gets it, pops on down, and he looks a bit like he's got a little bit lost. I mean, he's overrun the ball, perhaps. But I mean, he's on the ball for a good 10, 15 seconds, working out where everyone is, what he's going to do. And he just kind of keeps everyone at bay and just pops that ball over to Tway, who's completely unmarked, who's just cool as you like, half volley, boom, done. I mean, this is the other side to it. I mean, we've talked about his goals, but again, that composure in the box to pop out, to pick out his teammate. Spot on. Love it.
And then he showed us another beautiful piece of composure, sat the defender on his backside, turned inside another one and just slotted his second goal of the game later on. And then even, I mean, tempting on a hat-trick, you would think he might be thinking, right, let's just go for it, be a bit selfish, but beautifully unselfishly set up Southpaw later on for a goal of his own. And I just think that, to be honest, Dan, I was a bit worried watching him because I was thinking July the 1st, Belarusian Premier League transfer window opens. And we've obviously heard talk about the Yak heading for possibly Belgium in the past. I just think anybody who watched that game would be thinking, my goodness me, let's get him right now, probably for a steal as well. You're probably not going to pay a huge amount for him. Even if he isn't the finished article, and we've watched him for obviously 10, 12 games at least, and we know he can have some really off days, the potential there is quite frightening, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of moments you just mentioned there. The goal, I mean, to be fair, the Slavia defenders didn't really cover themselves in glory. I mean, if you watch that again, there's a little bit of, you wonder if they planted some banana skins or something just to make them done. Just want a little tiny, high five to Nosko in the build up to that goal. Does well to kind of build into that. He didn't get mentioned in a lot of the stats and everything that came out of the last couple of days, but he's my boy. So anything like that, I'm just going to point that out. Again, yeah. I mean, we mentioned about him sorting out the ball for Tway, but again for softball, as you say, on a hat trick in a position where you think he's probably gonna do all right, and he just drifts it out there. And of course, that wasn't softball's first goal at all. So softball very grateful for that. But I think as Yak drew about 4 players round him, they would have drawn to him like magnets, and he just popped it out there and allowed him to score that goal. It was just a really good performance all round. And I know we'll touch on this a little bit later, but this is why he ended up top of the Interstat players for the weekend. It's why the Vysshaya Liga, I'm probably saying that completely wrong, picked him as their player of the weekend, because it wasn't just his goals. He contributed to 2 or more, and just he was a pain in the arse, to be perfectly honest with you, all game. And yeah, more of that, please.
Absolutely, totally deserved man of the match recognition from the Belarusian Football Federation in their team of the week. And as you say, in terms of the stats, there were some great performances this week across the league as well. And yet the Yak came out on top, which is fantastic. I think though as well, looking at the stats, it showed that it wasn't really just a one-man show, although he was undoubtedly the star of the show and was ably assisted by a very poor Slavia defence in the second half. But yeah, I mean, that team also contains several of his teammates, doesn't it? And I feel, again, totally deservedly so, because it was a fantastic all-round performance in all areas of the pitch for me.
Yeah, I mean, we've mentioned softball briefly. 2 goals. He was only on the pitch for, I can't remember, was it half an hour, 40 minutes or something? He came on the second half. I mean, every time he comes on, he does something right. He's got to be asking when he gets a chance, to be honest with you. It wasn't just softball, obviously. Sadovsky got into the top 10 as well. And he didn't have a lot to do, but when he did, he was there. And I know even in the beginning of the first half, actually, there was a moment, or in fact, it was a couple of moments where there seemed to be a lack of communication, perhaps, between Sadovsky and the defenders. And they seemed not quite to be on the same wavelength, but they dealt with it. And you contrast that to the other side where the keeper's out berating his defenders left, right, and centre every time. And to be honest with you, rightly so. They really didn't do him any favours. So Sadovsky did well. Tway, I mean, really nice goal, and that wasn't his only contribution. Mawatu, I was looking back through the highlights, again involved multiple times. Didn't always come off on a goal, but just involved. My boy Noska, I'm going to, again, props out there to him. You just look across the team, and actually, this was something that kind of came up in our group chats as well. On our day, we're really hard to play against. When things kind of work for us, I flippantly said something, on one of the tweets as it was going out. Imagine if we'd had all 11 players. We got 5-0 with 10. What would we got with 11? We have our weaknesses, we have our issues. We're a young team. We're going to struggle with certain things, but when it clicks, when it works, this is a really formidable side that, I wouldn't worry about taking to anyone at their best.
So this was obviously a fabulous moment in terms of my 10 weeks of supporting Energetik. I'm not sure it was my highlight of the season, but it must have gone pretty close. Dan, do you have a moment that you've enjoyed more than this last game week?
This is going to sound a little bit typical, perhaps a little bit stereotypical, but it has to be my first week. I mean, I was there from the off. I was there before we even kicked the first ball of this season. I picked a team at random. I went onto Instagram and said, hey, guys, educate me. A couple of people pointed out, Bate are pretty good. Just have a little look at what they've done. I look what they've done. I kind of like, oh, okay, I've picked well, haven't I? Turned out I did, because, they won that. Suddenly there was a bit of buzz. Everyone else was getting into the league. And it's hard to think about this now in the kind of context that we're at now, with the Premier League coming back, Bundesliga coming back, everything else kind of like overshadowing a lot of what's been going on. But there was a point early doors on this where Energetik were like front and foremost in most people's opinion on football, because it was the only league going. They were the team that were winning. I mean, the social media things, I was gaining like so many people per game. Basically, every game that played, my follower count just jumped up. And there was just an excitement about the team. Who are these youngsters coming in here, tearing things up, and I don't think I'll ever forget that kind of vibe and that moment, because it just seems so positive and so enthusiastic at a point when everything else in the country and, well, to be honest, to a degree worldwide, was feeling so negative. So yeah, that's probably a bit of an overblown response to your fairly simple question, but yeah, that's got to be my moment. And what else can I say, really?
No, I can totally understand that. I mean, obviously, it's one of my few regrets in this season that I wasn't there when you were. In terms of that, it would have been an amazing feeling, I think. And hopefully we'll talk about it a bit later, but hopefully we can relive that feeling this weekend. I guess if I had to pick one moment, I think probably the Juric's goal at Islok was probably my highlight so far. Particularly helped as well by the fact that I think a few people had the notification on live score before it actually happened. I think live score was a little bit ahead of YouTube. So this wonderful moment, I know people sometimes say, I don't want it to be spoiled for me. I don't want the surprise to already be, I want to have that feeling of the euphoria when the goal goes in. But I had this really pleasant sort of 20, 30 seconds because I was also on the chat and somebody went, yes, with about 15 exclamation marks. And I thought, I know what's coming here. And I didn't expect it at all because I felt we were hanging on at 1-1, to be honest. And then obviously a spectacularly fine goal as well from Juric. So that's probably, if I look at one moment that was stood out above everything else, that would probably be it. But yeah, it's been a wonderful first half of the season. As you say, a wonderful introduction to Belarusian football. And I think we both feel that it's not just this is just the beginning, really, as far as we're concerned. We're loving it and we will be sticking with it for as long as we possibly can. And that may be a very long time. But looking ahead now, that was looking back, but we want to look ahead to this weekend. And we've got Bate.
So Bate who? Who? What? Pardon? Oh, them. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the ones who beat easily first game. Yeah, no problem. What have they done since or before or anything else? Yeah, they're a big team, aren't they? They've kind of got a lot going on. I'm going to give you a reason for confidence, because why not? I mean, yes, they've been on a bit of a spell fairly recently because they had a bit of a bumpy start with a really good run. But actually, looking recently, things aren't quite as positive as you might think. I mean, they drew against Vitebsk, they drew against Shakhtar. I mean, they lost to Dynamo Minsk. That's perhaps a little bit dodge. I mean, the only game they've won in the last 4 is against Belshina, and then everyone beats. Oh wait, yeah, okay. So moving on swiftly. So yeah, this is my point: is that okay? Yes, they've had a really good run, but lately, things aren't quite working for them. We've just had our own little slump, but we've just come out of the back of that with a bang and said, "Hang on a sec, we're back." I'm not expecting us to go there and necessarily do what Dynamo Minsk did. I don't necessarily think we've got the team to do that, but if we get this right, we've shown them before we can do it. On our day, we can do them.
I think it's a really, really interesting one. I've been thinking about this a lot because, unfortunately, fortunately, I'm delighted that it's that way. Energetik take up quite a lot of my thoughts on a weekly basis. And I've been trying to decide whether I think it's a good time to play them or a bad time to play them, because they're just coming off, as you say. I mean, anybody who loses to Dynamo Minsk, to be honest, has got to be a bit depressed, haven't they, really? I mean, it's not exactly a team that we didn't lose to, did we, for instance? I just feel like either they're going to be a bit depressed because they're thinking, how on earth do we lose to that lot? Or alternatively, they're going to be really cross and think that's awful. I did notice that they've scored a lot fewer goals at home than they have away from home as well, which is interesting. Maybe teams go there with a more defensive outlook, and that isn't going to suit us because I think we both know that we can't. I don't think we can play like Dynamo. That's the problem. I don't think we can sit there and be ultra defensive and hit them on the break. I don't think it's going to work for us. So that worries me in a way. I think the only way that we can beat them is by outplaying them and by outpassing them and outthinking them and out-attacking them, really. And that obviously will, as always, leave us with gaps at the back. And they may well exploit that. But yeah, I can't decide if it's good or bad, but a good time. Whether just losing to Dynamo is going to make them feel that they need to get back into the winning way against us, or whether they're going to have had such a jolt to their confidence. And as you say, I mean, they haven't been brilliant over the last few weeks. So it's not a one-off. They can't really write it off and say, this was just one bad result, we'll go straight back and win next week. So it's going to be intriguing, I have to say. I suppose selection-wise, the team kind of picks itself. I mean, I'm very much hoping that Bakic's red card is overturned. I've got no idea, have you, Dan, about any sort of appeals process. It's one of these many things about Belarusian football, like injuries and players leaving clubs that we really know nothing about. They just disappear. Poor old Sokol, Artem Sokol, who's one of our best centre-halves, in my opinion, has disappeared about 5 weeks ago. I had no idea where he's gone. He might have a cruciate knee ligament. He might just have decided to go and visit his family in Kazakhstan or something. I don't know. And this is a similar situation, isn't it? I would hope that we'd appeal the Bakic's red card. I don't know if there's any record of success in that. Maybe we're wasting our time. I think we have to assume that Bakic will be out. And therefore, I suppose Jucic plays up front with Yak and Gears slots back in at right wing back. And then all that's really left to do is not talk about this for ages, because we talk about it every single week, decide whether to play Softball or Umarov in midfield. And as you mentioned earlier on, Dan, I suppose really Softball must be thinking, if I can't get in the team from the start when I score 2 goals, then when am I ever going to get in the team?
Yeah, and there is a... Right, we're not going to talk about this long. As you say, we talk about it every week. For me, Umarov is a good player. I'd prefer to see him come on. Softball is a good player. I'd prefer to see him start. There we go. Softball starts, Umarov on the bench. Let's just do it. Done. Move on.
What I find interesting this week was that I always think of softball. We've always talked about softball in the past as well as being providing defensive stability. And I just wonder whether we thought this week, you know what, all this defensive stability nonsense that I'm providing to this team, it's not getting me in the team. So now I think I'm just going to go right down the other end. I mean, he appeared sort of on the right wing, didn't he? He scored both his goals from the right wing, which, by the way, he took both of them beautifully. But we've always talked about him sort of shoring up, sitting in front of our defence and working with Nosko to sort of counteract the attacking threat of other teams. And that does tend to be when he's brought on, to be fair, isn't it? To sort of, to stem the flow sometimes. But this week he just popped up with 2 wonderful goals. And I suppose now that he's shown that he can, support our defence and also score goals, he does seem to be, really, really staking a stronger claim level for the first 11. He's only actually been in the first 11 once all season. They lost 2-0 at Torpedo. So maybe that's something that the coach has seen then that's made him think he's just not a starter. But we've all seen week after week that he certainly brings a lot to the team. And I think it would be a wonderful chance to start him this weekend against a team that, that are going to pose quite a few problems for us in terms of that they are going to come at us, aren't they? I mean, I think that's the thing with Bate. They are quite attacking, and that does leave them with gaps at the back. So we will need to stem that flow and then try and hit them on the break, I think. I know it's not our ideal game, but I do think that that's something that we could certainly have some joy if we do that.
Yeah, well, I suppose there's this slightly odd moment, where Sofokal can see him sitting there getting into the team of the league, but not getting into the team of his club, which is, slightly odd moment. We've spoken about his defensive ability. We've spoken about we're now speaking about his attacking ability as well. I don't see it any different. And I don't want to sound like I'm really down on Umarov, because I am really not. I think he's a great player to bring on at this stage. I suppose this is the big thing for me with Softball as well, is that irrespective of what we're trying to do, he can do a good job there. I mean, we've not sat here and talked about how well that Umarov defends, for example. We can sit here and talk about how well Softball defends. Yes, we've talked about how well Umarov can move forward when it works for him, but we can do that about Softball as well. So I just think he's just a better all-round player to start the game with. I mean, that's unfortunate that you mentioned about the one game that we did that, but in my memory of a lot of these games where it hasn't quite worked, it's been the whole club or the whole team that's not really kind of turned up rather than any one individual. So I'm not going to hold that against him. I tried to simplify the point earlier, but I just don't see any other way that makes sense to me. Softball to start, Umarov as an option later. I'd love to see Umarov running at some tired legs. I really would, full of energy and just getting at them. That's my preference.
I think there was one moment, as you know, I've always been a massive champion of Umarov. There was one moment on Friday's game which absolutely summed him up, and in an instant, almost in about 10 seconds, it sums up why he's in the side from the start and why you might think he shouldn't be in the side from the start. He burst down the right wing and he pushed the ball past the left back, and he absolutely roasted him. He went past him like he wasn't even there. And I'm not saying, as we said, that Slavia were the greatest defensive side, but he absolutely burned off the left back. But then he got to the byline, got into a great position. He had 2 or 3 players in the box, and he hit the first defender. And I just thought, there's really no point in doing the first bit if you don't do better with the second bit. And I think that is being the case. I totally understand why Beliavsky keeps rolling him out, because he can do that. And not too many players, apart from the Yak, can do that. They can beat players. We haven't got a huge amount of pace in our side, but those two can beat players with sheer pace. However, the Yak had a day the other day when he had end product on the end of his sheer pace. Umarov again didn't. And again, it wasn't a difficult decision, I don't think, to take him off with half an hour to go. So we'll see. But, ultimately, he's been reluctant to change anything, even through this bad run. The other thing I'm not sure about, I'm pretty sure Skurdjuk is on loan from Bate. Now, we were allowed to play Nosko against Dinamo Brest. But I remember somebody saying, I think the Shakhtar guy was saying that their players that are out on loan are not allowed to play against them. So it will depend what Bate do with that. And they may decide, well, especially if dear old Sokol is still missing in action, they may decide, well, they're only 4 points behind us. We don't really, really want them to be able to play Skurdjuk against them. I'm sure it already been agreed one way or the other. But if it has been agreed, then I'm quite sure they won't be making any cases for him to be allowed to play after all. So we'll see about that. Let's hope we're not stretched by that rather unfortunate circumstance. Courses 2 on Saturday. One of these days, Dan, we will actually be there quarter of an hour before kickoff. Let's just say 5-2, shall we? That's more our kind of time, isn't it? 5 minutes before kickoff, bearing in mind the team news that needs to go up on 15 different social media networks and everything else we need to sort out. We'll be there at 5-2, we promise. We absolutely cannot wait. We're so excited about this game. There's probably some Premier League football you can watch on Saturday afternoon, but I would urge you to steer a wide berth of that and concentrate on this one, because it is first against fifth. And if we win this game, we're a point off the league leaders after more than half the season. That barely defies belief, doesn't it, really, to be honest?
Isn't that weird? Genuinely, isn't that weird? I mean, we look back at the teams and we looked at position and we've come into it at different points, but our original expectations of the team based on what they've just done have given way to us looking into the teams, looking into the leagues, looking into what they've done previous. And actually, over time, you kind of build up a bigger picture and you kind of look at this team and you think, really? You're up in fifth, 4 points behind first? Really? You should be up there? Yeah, we should. You know what? Looking at the positions that we are in and looking at the play we're doing, we deserve to be up there. We deserve to be in this fight. And that's really exciting, and I'm really enthused by that. I'd like to think, you touched on Skurdjuk, for example, I'd like to think, to be honest with you, whenever that was sorted out, we probably weren't viewed as much of a threat, so probably wasn't written into the contract. Maybe if they knew that this was going to be the position midway through the season, they might have done something different. I'm not saying it is or either way, or not either way, but I'm just saying, sometimes being viewed as the underdog is a bit of a strength to you, because people kind of underestimate you and don't necessarily put the same things in place. Yeah, I mean, we're going to aim for quarter 2. We always aim for quarter 2. We never make quarter 2. If you get there at quarter 2, be patient. We will get there. But we're going to be there, and we're going to keep on, and we're going to keep on doing what we're doing. Yeah, the live stream will be on YouTube. It's the same link to get to our channel as ever. And once you get to the channel, just look for the most recent live stream. If it's one from the previous week, it's not the right one. Simple as that. Bear with us. We'll join you shortly.
So come join us if you can. If you can't, that's absolutely fine. But please watch the game. I think it's going to be an absolute cracker. I certainly hope so. And we'll be back next week, we promise.
Goodbye for now.
Thanks again for taking time out of your busy lives to listen to us talk about a team whom we knew nothing not so long ago, but who we now hold dear to our football supporting hearts. Please do contact us with comments and suggestions if you have any. My Twitter handle is @agameInSpain and Dan's is @MajorDanB. That's with an A at the end. If, like us, you feel like talking about Energetik most days of the week, or even just at weekends, please do contact Dan and he will add you to the Energetik Ultras Twitter chat. We'll be back next week, but until then, please do stay energetic. We firmly believe that you won't regret it. Do svidania.